Today. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for coming to today's session. Today is about entrepreneurship, how to drive innovation and growth and change in your organizations. My name is Yemi Oluseun. I'm a project manager at the Change Hive, and I manage a lot of growth and transformation programs, working primarily as an entrepreneur in these organizations. So today I'm going to be sharing with you what I've learned in my 15 years of driving change and innovation across primarily financial services. But most of the knowledge I'll share today will transfer across industries, regardless of what industry you find yourself. So that's a little bit about me. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn and connect. I'd love to hear from you guys. Okay, so we've got a bit of a packed agenda for 20 minutes today, but don't worry, I'll try and cover it all. And we're going to have time as well for questions, but feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I'll be watching the chat to respond to questions as we go ahead as well. So please do keep it interactive. So before we get started, I wanted to start off by talking about why entrepreneurship, right? Because I'm sure a lot of us are already busy in our day jobs. You already have enough going on in your 9 to 5. It's like, I'm not trying to give myself more work. Thank you very much. I'm just setting my timer here so I don't overdo the time. If you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, because I could just blab on. Okay, so time is set now. So why entrepreneurship? And I've come up with 5 reasons why I think you may want to consider entrepreneurship. One is it's the best of both worlds, right? So you get to keep the safety of a job and have a steady paycheck, but also explore the creativity of entrepreneurship. It's also great for personal growth, right? Because it's a great way to explore and utilize skills that you may not use in your traditional 9 to 5. It's a great way to get recognition for a job well done. So if you find a problem that you think needs to be solved, taking that problem up and solving it for the organization means that you get visibility across the organization, across your peer group, but also across management as well. And it could be a great way to get the next promotion or the next pay rise that you may desire. Number 4 is a great way to make impact. To your organization, but also potentially to society at large, right? So if you find a problem that needs to be solved, as opposed to like complaining and thinking, oh, somebody should do something about it. Somebody, why can't that somebody be you, right? So it's finding that problem and seeing how you can solve it and driving it through to completion. And number 5, job satisfaction. The most satisfied people, somebody said something the other day that really stuck with me. They said happiness comes from progress. So satisfaction, most job satisfaction comes by you seeing problems and not just thinking there's a problem, but also seeing how you can be part of that solution and taking little incremental steps to solving that problem can really increase the satisfaction you get from doing your job or your career and just life in general. So I think these are some of the 5 reasons to consider pursuing entrepreneurship. Hopefully I've convinced you it's worth listening to. So here is the core of what today's session is going to be about, right? Is me walking you through this roadmap that I've come up with, having done it for the last 15 years. So I've come up with like 7 key things that are worth considering on your journey towards driving innovation and growth or change in your organization. So there's 7 key milestones. One starts with awareness. We're going to talk in this step about not just awareness of your own self personally, but also being aware of the organization at large. So being clear on what your own personal strengths and weaknesses are and what kind of appeals to you personally. And then also knowing the context of the organization you are operating in and what the strengths and the SWOT, the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of that organization is, and their appetite for change is important as a starting point, because too often I find innovators trying to change or trying to implement things that don't fit culturally the organization they're trying to implement it in. So understanding the context of your organization, I think, is the baseline starting point. So we'll talk about that and some tools that you may want to explore to get clarity on that. Then we'll move on to helping you define or find potential problems to be solved in the organization and helping you crystallize and define a clear problem statement that you can then pitch and use as a way to attract possible other entrepreneurs to come to your team and help you grow and shape the idea. So we'll talk about problem statement definition. Then we'll talk about how you can then go about crafting a value statement, a value offer. So once you found the problem and you think you have a solution for that problem, how do you come up with a clean one-liner that clearly encapsulates what the solution is that you're offering the market for, and then use that as hopefully a magnet to then attract more customers and more demand for the idea you're putting out there. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about step 4, how to test the idea. So you now have a potential solution, how do you test it and make sure there's demand for this solution that you're offering your organization or the rest of the world, however big the size of the market is that you're looking to address? How do you test it to make sure there's demand for it before you then start looking to scale it? Because the last thing you want to do, right, is to go ahead, scale this big, massive idea and nobody wants it, right? You don't want to launch and just hear crickets at the end of the day. So it's how do you minimize the risk of failure by testing? So we'll talk about that in step 4. Step 5, we'll talk about how to scale the idea. So how you build like a sales funnel for the idea. So once you've tested it, you know there's appetite for it. How do you then put fuel on it and just go fast and reach as many people as you can and increase profitability? We'll talk about that in step 5. Step 6, once you've been growing really, really fast and everything is all happening at the same time, how do you make sure you then take a step back and try and optimize things and make things as automated as they can be? Because usually in this journey, when you start out as the entrepreneur, you're the star of the show and everything kind of revolves around you. But sustainability and scalability long term comes from you being able to automate and systemize things such that when you step away from the picture, it's that whatever you've innovated keeps running with or without you. So we'll talk about some ideas on how you could think about doing that in step 6. And step 7, once you've started this whole entrepreneurship journey, you probably want to keep going, right? Is how do you stay entrepreneurial? How do you keep making sure the idea you've created stays sustainable and grows and scales onto like bigger and greater things? So here, that's an overview of what today's session is going to be about. I hope you're excited about it. I hope you're looking to learn. And like I say, let's keep it interactive. Put questions in the chat. I'm going to be looking out and responding to them as we go. So without further ado, let's get started with awareness. So with awareness, we're going to talk about how to know yourself better and also how to know the organization better. So in my experience of doing this for 15 years and also working quite closely with small business leaders as well as startup founders, I find there are 3 key skills that any kind of growth team needs to have. First one is clarity of purpose, or you need to have somebody that or some element of visionary skills. The common word for that, the jargon for that is like if you like, the founder type person, the person that has the big idea, the grand vision for what the future world could look like, right? So think of that as clarity of purpose as one key skill. The second skill is commercial awareness. Somebody needs to be able to take that grand vision and create like steps or strategy of how can we take this, I want to change the world, and come up with like a systematic plan of how you're going to go from the vision to actual like 5-year plan, 3-year plan. Think of that as your CEO type hat, right? So someone that has like commercial awareness and that can take something quite ethereal and make it grounded in reality by creating some kind of plan. So like a strategist person. And then the third core skill that you need at the bare minimum is someone that has kind of technical competence or an operator. So someone that can take that plan, that 5-year plan, and then execute on it. So it's like, how do we go from 5-year plan to like tactical, operational, step by step, day by day? What do we need to execute on day by day to see that that plan comes to fruition? So these 3 skills at the very minimum are the skills that any kind of growth or innovation team would need. At the very beginning, you may find that there's no team. The team is you. So you as a founder or you as the entrepreneur may need to have all 3 skills to start with. And I think it's important to know which of these skills come to you naturally and which of them is not so natural. Reason for that is, of course, anything that's not so natural, you want to make a note of it and see how you can find ways to augment those skills as soon as you can, or at least awareness is a pathway, is a long way towards finding a long-term solution, right? So it's these 3 skills being the foundation. And when you find that there's a gap in those 3 skill sets, you find that you probably teams would either come across as superficial. So if, for example, they're very clear on what their purpose is, they know exactly how to how to plan and execute on that plan. Sorry, they know what the vision is. They have a 5-year plan, but nobody's actually executing on it. You find that they're always superficial. They come across as superficial because they're always talking like high level terms, so that the product and big grand ideas, but nothing ever really seems to come out. Or you may find teams that may come across as quite hustlery because you find that they're very good they know exactly what they want to do. Like they have a 5-year plan, they know exactly how to execute, but it doesn't seem to be like a big central, big grand idea. It just feels like shiny object syndrome, right? So whatever is hot and cold, they kind of jump on it, create a plan and do something quickly. So there's always constantly spinning, and there's this like sense of hustling and frantic energy around it. So that's what I'm calling the hustler. And you find the third type of team when it's not very balanced is the idealist type team, right? Is so they're very clear on what the vision is. They're good at doing stuff, but they're not always good at grounding it in reality. So they're not good at taking this big grand vision and making it in a way that is relatable to the market and to like current society. So they may come across as quite idealistic with the concepts that they have. So I think all this to say, I think it's important to know which of these come to you naturally, and based on that, then define what your strengths are and what kind of innovations will probably be easier or more appealing for you to deploy. If you say to me, hey, I'm not sure where I fall on this spectrum, it just feels, I'm not sure which skills I may be deficient in or not as strong as, don't worry, I've got you. There's a tool, a framework that I really love for self-awareness called Ikigai. I don't know if you drop a yes in the chat if you heard about it. If you haven't, just drop a no. But if not, I'll just quickly explain what Ikigai is. Ikigai is a Japanese framework that means reason for being. Essentially, it's 4 concentric circles. It talks about what you love, what you're good at, what you can pay for, and what the world needs. And the idea is when you find an overlap of all 4 concentric circles, then you find your Ikigai, you find your reason for being, you find your flow, essentially. And if you say to me, hey, I don't really know what I love or what I'm good at or what I'm paid for, don't worry, I've got you. I've got more frameworks for you to look up as well. If you're struggling with the kind of things that you love, I think a great tool that we want to explore looking at is something called career anchors. I'm going to drop a link to it on the chat. So feel free to check it out. But you can just Google it, by the way, it'll just come up. It's an MIT, it was developed by an MIT professor, and essentially categorizes people into 8 key buckets of the kind of careers or the kind of working styles that naturally appeals to them. So I think it's worth checking out and seeing which of these are your natural style. Then what you could be good at, I think Myers-Briggs does a good job of defining personality types, personality strengths and weaknesses as well. So if you don't know your Myers-Briggs, I think it's worth checking it out and doing the test. Again, I'll drop a link to it in the chat, but feel free to just Google it and it'll come up 16 personalities. Do the survey and see which of these 16 comes up as your default or as your innate style. One thing to say here is in all of these tools I'm recommending, please bear in mind they are tools. They're not supposed to be used as a way to pigeonhole you. I'm suggesting it as a way for you to just grow in self-awareness of what your natural strengths are and what your weaknesses are as well, just so you can then have that awareness as you go out into the world or into your organization and try and help shape change. I feel the best change makers are those that have a good sense of self and solid within, they have a good sense of self-awareness and they're solid within themselves. And that surety is that what they can then push out and use as the force to drive the innovations they want to see. Hence why I'm recommending this. But please don't use these tools as a limitation, as a cap to say, it says I'm introverted. That means I can never do any extroverted things. That's not what it means. It just means that your default style is introversion. But of course, if you need to be slightly extroverted, it might take a bit more effort to do that. But I think as human beings, we have that flexibility. So please bear that in mind. I think it's also important to know what you're not so good at as well, right? So it's when things are not going right, what tends to be how do you handle that? I think it's worth knowing that. Again, there's a tool to check that out. So by all means, feel free to check out those tools and do the assessment. And then if you're struggling to see what the world needs, I think the UN has done a good job of categorizing most of the world needs into 17 buckets. I know there are flaws. This is not a perfect model, but I think it's a good starting point. So again, check it out and see which of these kind of appeal to you naturally. That kind of shows you what you tend to, the kind of problems you may find that you naturally want to gravitate towards as well. So I think this tool is a great framework to start. And then what you can be paid for. I used to say to people, look on job boards and, and all this other, and, do some self-reflection meditation. But honestly, I think these days, ChatGPT can help a lot. If you've done the previous surveys and done all that, all you need to do is go into ChatGPT and say, hey, act as a coach or act as a counselor. I am Myers-Briggs ENTJ. My career anchor is technical, and put in as much information as you know about yourself, and just say, can you please suggest to me the kind of innovations that you think would be great? And you'll be surprised, they'll come up with quite useful ideas that will start the thought process going. So in summary, I think this is a great way, or these steps are a great way to really get clarity on yourself as an individual. Secondly, knowing your business, I think, is important, right? So really understanding the context of the organization you're operating in is what is the current vision and what are the key results that the CEO or the bosses or the stakeholders or the shareholders in the business want to see. I think it's important to know that, because then that makes sure that whatever innovation you're looking to introduce aligns with the business's vision and mission, right? So knowing the business's vision, its mission, its core values, the strategy for the year, and any kind of objectives or key results it wants to see. I think it's important for you to then know if what you're looking to introduce may or may not align to the organization. And then finally, knowing whether or not this organization is ready for change, right? So I think 3 key questions to ask, right, is are people mentally and do they have the mental and emotional capacity for a change and transformation program? Because it could be that they've gone through so much change recently that people are just change fatigued. Now is not a good time. It doesn't matter how great the innovation is, it's just not going to fly because there's no bandwidth for it. Secondly, is there a skill set or are there enough change agents or change champions within the organization to support you as you drive through this innovative change that you're looking to introduce? If the answer is no, then you may want to first of all stop and take some time to build allies first within the organization before you start trying to introduce any kind of change. And then thirdly, if you're trying to introduce a change and innovation, whose current power is that change and innovation going to be disrupting? Because of course, you don't expect that person's going to be happy to be losing their power to you coming to change the organization, right? So if you know, for example, your innovation is going to change somebody's soft power, how can you proactively manage it and make sure that that person is brought on board or is not too disruptive? Sorry about the sirens. I don't know what's going on outside my house, but hopefully that should fade away soon. Okay, so in summary, we've talked about quite quickly there, and I've run out of a lot of time. That took a lot of time actually. Talked about how you can know better yourself and also how you can better know your organization. I think that is the fundamental baseline. I think that's, talk about Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. I think this awareness piece is almost like 80% of the job, right? So I think it's good that we spend a lot of time on this bucket. So it's knowing yourself and knowing the organization you're doing, looking to implement change in first as the fundamental baseline. That's step 1. Step 2, problem statement. I think in this section, we're going to talk about like how you can generate ideas for innovation or how do you find opportunities for change. Now, for most businesses, when I go in and I'm talking to startup founders or business owners, I'm talking about how to help them grow or innovate. There are 3 key things I'm really looking at, right? Is they're usually either looking for more customers or looking for ways to increase their prices or reduce their cost, or how to improve retention and keep their existing customers within their pool for a long time. So I think these 3 categories forms the basis or a good starting point for any idea generation process. If you're stuck for ideas on how you can innovate within your organization, I think start by thinking about how can I help this organization get more customers, or 2, how can I help it increase prices or reduce its cost, or 3, how can I help it improve retention or increase repeat purchase from our existing customer bases. I think thinking on these 3 topics would start to generate ideas that you can then explore for innovation. When those ideas come up, then we want to then run it through this 4 criteria, right? We want to make sure that the ideas you generated pass these 4 things to make sure that it's a viable problem or it's a worthwhile problem to be solved. First of all is the problem you found, the people that you're going to be solving the problem for, are they profitable? Are they able to pay, or are they willing to pay for the services? An example I like to give is around like if you're trying to help students, for example, create better CVs so they can interview well and get great jobs, that's a problem to be solved for sure. But the problem might be that students are not the most profitable segment, I don't know, to solve this problem for. If you find that that's the case, then you will have to then solve another problem, is how can you make sure how can you find a third party that may then be willing to pay for the services that you're offering to students, because they themselves might not be able to pay for it, right? So it's how do you solve that problem? So it's making sure, first of all, that whoever you're solving the problem for is profitable, they can pay for it, and they're likely going to be repeat purchase customers. Secondly, they have to care about the problem that you're solving. And the way you know they care about it is they're actively doing something today about trying to solve it, right? If somebody says they have a problem and they're not trying to solve it, then maybe they don't really care about the problem that much. Thirdly, they have to be easy to find. You don't want to be trying to look for a needle in a haystack, right? So are these customers or these people you're looking to solve the problem for, are they easy to find, or are you going to spend so much of your time trying to find them that it's not even worth solving? Fourth, is it a growing customer base? Like, so are you going to find that once you've solved it for this customer, there's going to be more repeat customers, or there's going to be ways to scale the business? Otherwise, you solve it for that small demographic and there's no way to scale, and then it's hard to grow. So I think these are things to consider and bear in mind. I'm going to skip this slide for now because of time, but I talk about making sure here, like when you essentially this summarizes what we just talked about, right? So it's identifying the problem, interviewing your potential customers to make sure that they're really worth solving the problem for. And then once you've interviewed them, examining how big this problem is, right? So doing some kind of analysis, like how big is the potential problem from a size base, so addressable markets, serviceable market, obtainable market, and then looking at the macro environment overall. So seeing like, is there any macro environment changes that's going to come up that may disrupt what you're looking to do and become a problem for you long term. So thinking about those things will help you then define whether or not this problem is worth solving. Step number 3, offer statement. So you now know who you are, you know the organization as well quite well, you know what problem you're looking to solve. Now, you interviewed customers. Based on that, you now probably want to think about, okay, so now that I have a problem, how can I define a solution around the problems I found? So a lot of brainstorming, and the 4 things you want to answer with whatever solution that you're offering the market is, what's the dream outcome going to be for my customer? How am I going to, so dream outcome tends to align with either helping them get more money, more love, more health, more time, more prestige, right? So it's this solution you're bringing out to the customers, what's the outcome going to be for them? Secondly, what's the likelihood of achieving the outcome that you have proposed? 4th, how much time are they going to have to wait to see results? And number 4, how much effort is going to be required on their part to see results? An example of this is if, for example, the product you want to offer, in my example of CV for students, right, is you're going to offer 6-week career coaching to help students get jobs. You could say 6-week career coaching is the product, but that doesn't really mean very much and doesn't have any kind of sentimental attachment or pull. If you said something instead like, I'm going to help you get a 6-figure FANG PM role in 6 weeks and 6 interviews or less, or your money back, for the right demographic, that would mean a lot. By the way, FANG there means those are the top tech companies, right? Facebook, Netflix, Apple, no, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, FANG, PM roles, right? So you notice in there that I've essentially tried to crystallize all 4 questions in that one statement. I've told you what the outcome is going to be. I've told you how long, the likelihood of you achieving it, or minimize your risk by telling you you're going to get your money back if you don't get the result I promised. I've told you how long it's going to take you to get it and how much effort you're going to have to expend to get it, right? So 6 interviews or less to get it. So in that one line, I've very much encapsulated what exactly I'm offering you. And I've used a language that the people I'm talking to or my ideal customers will understand. FANG PM role is something that they used, for example, in this context when I was interviewing them. So it's getting that problem statement defined and then coming up with a very simple business case on, a clear business case on what that solution would look like. It doesn't have to be like a long business case, just a clear, clean 1-pager of that solution that you're offering the market. Then number 4, once that product is offered, then you don't want to think about like, how can I test it to make sure that it's a good market fit for what I'm offering? So 3 questions you want to answer, right, is, are you solving a problem that people are willing to pay for? Is my solution well explained? Do people understand it? And also, do I have a repeatable way to reach new customers? These are the 3 things you're looking to answer at this stage of your innovation. And a great way to do it is by coming up with MVPs, right? And the MVP will get more and more detailed as you iterate through the process. You may start up with a simple flowchart diagram, then a landing page, then an explainer video, then you could do like some fundraising or try and, if it's internally within your organization, try and see if you can get some budget to fund the project at this point, do some kind of manual operations. So essentially, you keep increasing your commitments to the solution as you get positive feedback from the market is what is being depicted here in this flow diagram. Then number 5 is you think about how can you scale this idea. So now you've tested the market, you know there's demand for it. So how can you make sure you can get more of the same customers coming through the door and you can keep them for as long as possible? For this, you need to build a sales funnel. And a sales funnel, very simply put, is a way you can take people from brand awareness and nurture them, convert them into customers, deliver on what you said you were going to deliver when you sold them the product. Then you think about how you're going to retain them. So once you delivered, how do you make sure you keep them in your funnel for as long as possible? So having loyalty schemes and subscriptions to keep them coming back. And then if things change for whatever reason and they have to leave, how do you make sure you offboard them in a way that is pleasant so that if their situations change again, they still feel like it's worth coming back to you, so they're not so jaded by the offboarding process that they never want to come back to you or refer their friends back to you, for example. It's like, so how can you offboard them in a way that's pleasant so that if you do decide to win them back again, they are amenable to the process? So that's step 5. Step 6 is once you have scaled it, now we're thinking about how can you automate and systemize it in a way that is BAU and is integrated well within the organization. So go from project thinking to more business as usual thinking. So at this point, you're looking at how can you document processes and remove yourself away from the process. So at this point, you're thinking about things like making sure you record your processes. So tools like Loom, creating flowcharts, identifying any inefficiencies in your processes, any kind of duplication, and seeing how you can systemize and automate things. So automation tools like Zapier and make, I think, are your go-to tools at this point in the automation process. I think it's very important to do this, right? Because otherwise you find that it never really becomes integrated into the organization and it stays forever as a project. And that's not really what we want, right? We want it eventually to get embedded in, and so you can move on to other innovative ideas. And then step 7 is, once you've integrated it and is now part of BAU, how can you make sure you keep it growing and you explore more entrepreneurial options? And at this point, you could either go back to looking at more problems to be solved within the organization. Remember those 3 circles we looked at earlier? So finding more customers, increasing prices, or increasing retention. So finding new innovative ideas within the organization, or thinking about how you can, this innovation you've created, how can you launch it in new markets or new geographies, or how can you spin off this innovation and sell it off and make it get acquired by somebody else, or how can you merge or merge with another similar business to grow that way. So hopefully this has given you some ideas of how you can innovate and drive growth within your organization. To recap, we talked about how to grow self-awareness of yourself and also of your business, how to define your problem statement, how to clearly define a value offer statement, how to do the product market fit, and make sure that there's demand for what you're looking to introduce to the market. We talked about how to build a sales funnel to help you grow and scale the idea fast. And then we talked about, once you've scaled the idea and there's demand for it, how do you make sure you systemize it and integrate it back into the organization so it becomes business as usual, or BAU. And then step 7, how do you stay entrepreneurial going forward? I hope you found that useful. In the chat for me, please put for me what your biggest takeaway has been from this talk so far. I'm always delighted, and I always love to hear that from you. And I just want to say thank you so much for paying attention. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, I'm on standby and available to take